How's she going, good listener? Welcome inside the Tall Can Audio podcast for a May-long weekend edition of the show. Matt Robinson along with you as always. Thanks for joining me here today. This will just be a quick one as we hit on a couple of things going on and kind of lay out what's to come here in the next few days. This is not your typical Monday start of the work week show. As you guys know, those of you who have been here for a long time, we will typically bump the start of the week show until Tuesday after the long weekend, and that is what's going to happen again this week. But that didn't mean there wasn't a couple of things on my mind here, and things were left a little bit in a gray area in terms of what you could expect on the Friday show. So just checking in to do that. We'll have a pint. We'll talk about a couple of things here. Just me and you to hang out kind of midway through the long weekend before we get back into things next week. It has been a little bit wild here over the last couple days to see what the long weekend has looked like across Canada. I'm seeing snow in Calgary. It's kind of a nice, easy 20 here in Ottawa, right around there. And a heat warning has been issued for Toronto. So we're getting all sides of Canada at this point. I always kind of laugh at it's just a personal thing. It's not a big deal, but like we always call this long weekend May 2-4, even though it doesn't always fall on the weekend of the 24th, and that's fine. But literally next Sunday is May 24th, so we probably could have done this different. I know it's the third whatever of May and whatever else. Look, on Tuesday morning, you will hear from, instead of the usual Matt and Rob kind of weekend roundup, we're going to talk to a guy who worked for the CBC for a very long time. Many of you will recognize the name and recognize his voice when you hear him on Tuesday. It's Tom Harrington, and he spent a very long time working CBC sports. After that, he did move along and do some news stuff. He did, some political stuff. He kind of bounced around the CBC a little bit, but for the longest time, he was known as one of their top sports guy. Covered every Olympic Games from 1996 to 2010. Covered some World Cups in there, and I thought this might be an interesting time to touch base with him because, believe it or not, we are just a few weeks away from the beginning of the World Cup, and the vibes are a little strange here across Canada, if they exist at all. You're hearing that it's coming, you're seeing commercials for it, you're seeing weird pictures being posted of some seriously sketchy-looking bleachers at BMO Field, where this is all going to take place, but it just doesn't really feel like it's landing. And I don't know if that's some of the political stuff that's wearing off from the U.S. in terms of how many people from other countries aren't that interested in attending these games. Is it how spread out it is? Like, we talked to our friend AJ Jackieback, and we will again before this World Cup begins, but he attended the games in Qatar, and in Qatar, the tournament was kind of centralized around an area like Cobourg to Hamilton on the 401 and up to Barrie. Like, there was a bunch of stadiums, as there always are for a World Cup, but it was all tightly contained. And other countries have done this kind of spread out thing before. That's sort of half the deal when you host a World Cup. But nobody's ever tried it quite like this, where you're going to have games from Boston to Vancouver to Seattle to Los Angeles to Miami to Guadalajara and Mexico City. Like, it's not easy if you want to see as much of it as possible, if you want to follow one team. This is a really ambitious project. I'm not sure how great of a project it's going to turn out to be, but I wanted to talk to Tom Harrington about it, and because he had the background of having covered a bunch of these events, he was in Atlanta in 96 when the bombing happened at Olympic Park. He covered Salt Lake City, Utah in 2002, which was the first Olympics after 9/11, and it happened to be in the United States. We got a whole bunch of things kind of intersecting right now in terms of the way people feel about the United States, wars going on, this and that. I thought this would be a unique moment to kind of talk to somebody who could kind of encapsulate this, who could kind of wrap this up, who had seen a lot of things, has covered news, has covered sports, has been and done these things. So we'll do that on Tuesday morning with Tom Harrington. That's going to be good. The other thing I should mention is that we expected to have Julian McKenzie on the show this week. And he is going to be in studio this week, but we've had to reschedule. And so Julian is coming in studio on Friday afternoon. And I think we've talked about this before on the podcast. It's not a great time to release a new episode, right? A lot of people listen to their podcasts. A lot of you have given us your feedback and stuff. It's on your commute to work. It's while you're at the gym. It's, things like that kind of fall by the wayside over the course of a weekend. So releasing a new episode of the show on a Friday is rarely a good idea. It gets lost by the weekend, and then we drop something new on a Monday morning, and the episode doesn't get the time to breathe that it deserves. So I will talk to Julian this Friday afternoon, and then we will hold that episode until the following week. So I'm not sure what else is going to play out here throughout this week. We will find something. We always do. But the promised Julian McKenzie conversation will have to wait a week. But it'll be worth it. Julian's an interesting guy. He's a fun guy to have in here. So hope you'll stay tuned for that. Subscribe if this is by chance on a long weekend edition, the first time you've been here, because we will keep lots of really great guests coming for you here throughout the next, it's going to be an interesting couple of months here in sports. Like I said, with the Stanley Cup playoffs going on, with the World Cup dead ahead, it's always an interesting time for sports. So stick around for all of that. On Monday evening, we will see a Game 7 between the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres. I'm not going to dive too deep into this other than to say this has been, I think, every bit as good of a series as most people said going in. Like, a lot of people thought this might be the best series of the second round. I personally was on the other team, and there was sort of a second team that said, no, Colorado, Minnesota will be the best series of the second round. And it turned out to be good, maybe a little shorter than we thought. Started with a bang there with that huge, whatever the hell it finished, 9-6 game or 9-7 game. But I think we get a little bit tied up sometimes in recency bias, and that series has been over for a few days, and Montreal and Buffalo are still going at it. And I don't think anybody quite saw Saturday night's Game 6 going the way that it did. I don't think anyone was shocked that Buffalo won. I personally thought Montreal was in a good position to wrap it up on Saturday. That did not happen. They did get off to, well, I was going to say they got off to a nice start. They got off to a start that saw them down 1-0 very quickly, but they bounced back and got up 3-1, and then that was it. Buffalo puts an 8 spot on them, and we're going home. They're going home. Buffalo's not home for me, but they're going home for Game 7. And I don't know whether that's great news for them or not. Nobody in this series has done a particularly compelling job of defending home ice. Lindy Ruff, head coach of the Sabres, did kind of reference that in his post-game thoughts that, maybe they would petition the league to have the game in Montreal. And it's opened up this interesting conversation that's probably interesting to me as a Leaf fan, and I know there's a lot of you listening, and perhaps another significant, heavily significant portion of this listenership, you as a Sens fan, that's kind of sick of hearing about how great the Montreal crowds are. How great it's been to see how electric things are at the Bell Center. And they are. Like, those things are true. The crowds have been insane. It's been loud. The chants have been great. But I think we reach a point where the conversation on it jumps the shark a little bit. And it stops being special when you shove it down everyone's throat every night. And especially when this is a nationwide broadcast. If Canada is the home of hockey, and we're all tuned in here in this communal sense that you still want us to pretend is a thing, to watch the Stanley Cup playoffs on CBC, I guess. simulcast on CBS. It's on Sportsnet. It's not the same thing anymore. You'll forgive me for poorly timed throat clear coincidence, I promise. Then you can't keep telling the rest of Canada that Montreal has the best fans in the league. Because I have seen Stanley Cup final games in Edmonton that are incredibly loud. I've seen Stanley Cup playoff games in Vancouver that are incredibly loud. This building here in the nation's capital in Ottawa can get loud and has gotten loud. Toronto is a different thing. It's been a while for Calgary since they've been in it. Winnipeg, man, remember? It was all we heard about in 2011 and 12 and 13 when Winnipeg got their team back. Best building in the league. You haven't seen hockey till you've seen it in Winnipeg. All right. Do they all pale in comparison to Montreal? Maybe they do. Maybe they do. But you can't play that card before every game. And if you do, and if you're a Habs fan, you can't get upset when that bubble bursts and the whole world watches the Olays dry up in the second period while you're getting your ass tanned. And that's fine. It happens. It's hard to be excited when you're getting your ass beat. Every sports fan has experienced that. But at the home of hockey, at the grandest stage, all of this stuff, there are countless videos in the third period of people heading for the door early. And now, Habs fans want you to believe that that's us sending our team a message that you weren't good enough tonight. Stop. Just stop. At that moment, Montreal is any place. You are just another fan who's pissed off at his team, and it's okay. We've all been there. A lot of us like to pretend we didn't do it. We don't boo our own team. We would never leave early. You've seen it in every venue. And Montreal was no different. They left. It wasn't fun anymore. They went home because they were getting their ass kicked. But we don't talk about that anymore. We were not allowed to have that conversation. I wonder how many of those people who were streaming out the door, up the aisles, through the concourse, and out the door early in Montreal were the same people on Twitter arguing, saying, Montreal would never do that. It's different when Montreal does it. All right. It is unquestionably, if not then one of the very best buildings in the league to see a game live. That comes through loud and clear on television. But if you are going to rub everyone else's nose in it before every game, you should expect that when it goes poorly and you are shown at not a particularly flattering moment, you're going to hear about it. And I wonder now, with all the talk about how great the Montreal crowds have been, and they have been, I've established this, is anyone going to talk about on these broadcasts the fact that the Habs have only won 2 games in Montreal in these playoffs? One of them required overtime? Like, they're full value to be where they are. They're going to Game 7 in the second round. It's been a hell of a run. They've arrived earlier than a lot of people thought they would, earlier than I thought they would. This has been a great series. But no atmosphere like it has not led to success, right? It's nothing like playing a Saturday home game in Montreal in the playoffs. We got slapped 8-3. They've only had 2 home wins thus far, and that's fascinating. Now, as I said a minute ago, it's not like Buffalo's lighting it up at home either. So maybe Montreal's in a good position heading down to Buffalo for Game 7 on Monday night. It'll be a hell of a game. It's been a hell of a series. It's been an interesting series, the ups and downs and the goaltending changes at one end and, some of the things going on there. But, yeah, it has not been a series where home ice has been heavily defended. The winner and we won't spend much time on this, but the winner gets Carolina. That series will start on Thursday. And by the time I have to bring it up, I have to. I feel compelled, good listener, to stay on my bullshit. Because this has been a bit of a thing for me for a while now. The Carolina Hurricanes, by the time they play Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final against the winner of Montreal Buffalo on Thursday, will have had 12 days off since their series ended in a sweep against Philadelphia. That means they will be playing their 5th game in 26 days. How is this? I get it. We've talked about it. I'm not going to beat it to... I'm already beating it to death a little bit. But from the time that they eliminated the Ottawa Senators, swept the Flyers, and then got this series going, they will have played 5 games in 26 days. Their playoff run thus far has been 8 games in 35 days. If you want a little context for that, their final 8 games of the regular season were done in 13 days. What a mess. I have no idea what to expect out of the Carolina Hurricanes when that series starts for a bunch of reasons. Right? They love to play that defensive game that doesn't let you anywhere near the net. That's going to be a really tough adjustment for Buffalo and Montreal. That series has been pretty wide open. Access to the front of the net has been available to anyone who wants it. That won't be the case against Carolina. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, but I'm not really sure what kind of shape Carolina is going to be in. Did they have a little mini training camp again here to get ready for this? It's not a lot of game time. And I referenced last week, Freddie Anderson was on the playoff run of his life. Now, he's a frequently injured guy as well, so maybe the time off had been good for him. But if that guy is playing as well as he ever has in the playoffs, I don't want him taking weeks off at a time. I want him in the groove, in the net. Let's go. One more interesting stat on this. Over the last 2 games, Montreal has allowed 11 goals. Over the last 2 games, Buffalo has allowed 9 goals. Over the 8 games that the Carolina Hurricanes have played thus far in the entire playoffs, they have allowed just 10 goals. So something's got to give. Regardless of who's going to play Carolina, we have 2 very different weather systems colliding, and we'll see what kind of storm it creates. I seem to be stuck in a very hurricane mindset here. I try and find a way out. The Blue Jays are working on finding a way out of the early season doldrums that they have experienced for quite... Now, it is interesting that if you delete... You're not really allowed to do this. If you delete the last 2 series that the Blue Jays have played against the Tampa Rays, where they have been summarily pounded on, but if you were to delete just those 2 series, you would see a Blue Jays record of 13-7 in their last 20 games. You go, hey, that's pretty good. And it is. Unfortunately, the standings will not allow you to just delete those games, so they do count. But the Jays grabbed 2 out of 3 against a Detroit team that was ripe for the picking. Now, Detroit would have said the same thing about you, right? These Jays are not yet correct. They are not yet healthy. They are not yet playing well. While we're struggling, we better pick them off. And that's exactly what Toronto thought about Detroit. And Toronto was able to do it. The Bats, I guess they're coming around. But Saturday, you had to squeak it. Like, you lost on Friday. That kind of stunk, obviously. But on Saturday, the fact that you got that win, a 2-1 victory on a bullpen day, where you've got Fluharty starting... You're asking Spencer Miles to go, 3 1/3? I'm not sure if that's sustainable or not, and the rest of the bullpen is great, and that's fine. But the offense is still only able to scrape out a 2-1 win. You do score 4 runs on Sunday, but they all happen early, and maybe it doesn't matter. Like, when you get into a spot like this where the offense is struggling so much, you tend to not be able to zoom out. So maybe I'm guilty of that here, but... all of those runs came in the first 3 innings, and then the Bats were completely shut down again. Now, thank God Gosman was fantastic. But in that game, we did see Vladdy hit one out. We've been begging him for it. It's just his third home run of the season. And he said after the game, he didn't even feel like that was the one he was waiting on. Like that was the big swing that would kind of help him break out. He wants one that feels like he knows as soon as he hits it, it's going out, and that this wasn't quite that. But that's a him thing. For the rest of us, just hit him out, man. Like, we'll take it. Dalton Varsho, who has quite rightly taken some criticism here over the last several weeks. Well, maybe more than that, right? The whole season, perhaps. But he seems to be coming around. Over the last 15 games or so, he's actually hitting, believe it or not, close to 300. The big Grand Slam walk-off last week. Another couple big hits this weekend. Like, these are the pieces that it's not. There's not going to be one game where it all just clicks back in and go, oh, look, there's the 2025 playoff Blue Jays. It's going to be guys slowly clicking back, if it's going to happen at all. And maybe it won't. Like, it is fascinating to look right now. You win this series against Detroit. You're half a game out of the playoffs right now. Now, you're 9.5 back of the division. But you could still easily make a wild because the AL has been so bad, like inexplicably bad. So the season isn't lost at this point, but you still have, there's no way around the fact that your record isn't good and you're going to have to do some serious work because not all of these teams are going to stay bad either. Somebody's got to collect wins for the next 4 months. It won't be just Toronto. So if they're going to come out of this, if they are going to start, putting wins together and stringing series together, it won't all click at once. Like, even just coming into this Detroit series, you were looking at it going, man, neither Springer nor Vlad, A, have it going, or B, look like they're close to getting it going. And I have confidence that Vlad will get going. My confidence, if I'm being real with you, that Springer will, is less. Now, he's not going to be this bad all year. But half the reason that last season happened was because George Springer bounced back from what had been a very bad 2024 in a way that nobody expected. You get to a certain age where you just go, yeah, we're getting to a point where that contract's going to look bad, and he's not going to be what you want him to be anymore. Now, he defied that aging curve, but coming into this year, he breaks his toe early in the season and puts him in a bad spot. So I don't know right now, are we still seeing residuals of that? Or are we starting to see what we thought we were going to see last year and we got lucky and didn't? I think it's too early to know, right? The guy's been beat up and injured already this season, so maybe that's all it is. But maybe we have arrived at the point that we thought we would arrive at last year, which would not be great news, obviously. But you're going to get Kirk back. Gosman, like I said, was fantastic again on Sunday. And now you go in and face the Yankees. 4-gamer in the Bronx. And I know with how far back you are and how much, suffering we've already had this season, you're really hoping to go and win the series, take 3 or maybe even 4. If they come out of this series having just split it, just take 2 of 4, I'll be happy enough. And that's tough for me to say. With the bad baseball we've watched here for the first 2 months, you would like to aim higher than that, but for the moment, hold your ground. Take 2 of 4 here. You got the Pirates next weekend. You have a brief little pocket here of some softer teams coming up. Just survive this week in the Bronx. Last thing here, Saturday's Netflix MMA card. I guess I could comment on the PWHL playoffs, but look, I'm the Charge are down 2-0. I thought game 1, they were the better team, and crazy shit happens in overtime and late, and you ended up losing that game. Game 2, they were not the better team, and you got where we've gotten 100 times before. Gwyneth Phillips holds the fort. but you just can't find that extra goal you need. And that is a problem for this team. And it's going to become a bigger problem with this league expanding by 4 teams this summer. You're going to lose more core pieces. Now, so is everybody else. I certainly understand. But this team can't score. All season, we've watched this team play, and the recipe for success is always the same. Just hope to hell Gwyneth Phillips can hold the fort long enough for you to score a goal or two. And often enough, it's worked. And in game 2, it didn't. But this has to be fixed. I see a lot of people complaining about the officiating, and I think it's real. Like, Ottawa was clearly screwed over, frankly, on both overtime goals by penalties that weren't called. And you find yourself down 2-0. It's bad officiating, but it's the same thing I've said across baseball, across the NHL, or whatever for years. It's not biased officiating. It's just bad officiating. And the PWHL has to get that figured out as well. Because, again, with this league expanding by 4 teams, there's more games, and you're going to have to get more officials. And I don't know where you're going to find better ones. So this might remain a bit of a problem here for a while. Is the series over? No. But kinda. Like, I guess Gwyneth Phillips could steal you 3 games. But at some point, you're going to have to score her a couple of goals. And for now, they're just not showing an ability to do that, at least often enough. So we'll see what happens in game 3 on Monday. It is just a best 3 of 5 series. So you are against the ropes for sure. But on Saturday night, we saw MVP, which is most valuable promotions. That's Jake Paul's shit. Run their first MMA card. We've done a lot of boxing before. And this was the Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano fight as the main event. But it had a full card. It was several hours long. And this was their attempt to kind of steal the thunder of the UFC, especially just ahead of this UFC White House card. And it stunk. Like, I'll put this out here, and it's not really great for the show that I do this, but this is going to be the last thing we talk about. So if you don't care about this, see ya, I guess. But this is the problem with today's kind of these streaming services getting involved in every sport and just trying to find their own way, trying to find a way to make an impact and try and get your $10 again for another month. I guess Netflix is more than that now. But like, this wasn't the same as having to pay $50 or $80 or whatever it is now for a boxing pay-per-view or a UFC pay-per-view. The UFC is now on Paramount Plus, so they don't really have that either. It's the monthly subscription. And this was talked about leading up to it with the star power that was on it. Ronda Rousey was a huge star. Gina Carano was, in the early days of women's MMA, she was a legitimate name. And then, frankly, she went on for becoming a bigger name in Hollywood as an actor and online as a bigot. So people knew who she was. Francis Ngannou was a UFC heavyweight champion who never lost the title and eventually just left the UFC because he couldn't agree with them on their shitty contract structures. Nate Diaz was formerly a star in the UFC who has also gotten quite a bit older. It is clear as day it is not safe for that man to be in the octagon anymore, or in this case, the hexagon. The UFC owns trademarks for fighting in an octagon. So if you're going to put on an MMA show, you have to have a different shape. I don't know why they didn't go with the hectadecagon, but anyway, this was in a hexagon or whatever that's worth to you. But this thing was on TV for like 5 hours. And the total fight time, when you added up how long there was actual combat playing out in the hexagon over those 5 or 6 hours, it was 22 minutes and 5 seconds. This was disgusting. Now, fight cards are like this a little bit. Wrestling is like this a little bit. You don't want to bring people in, and let's say you got 6, it's always more than this, but let's say you got 6 fights on your card, and all of them end within the first 2 minutes of the first round. Now, you still have some stuff to pad this out. You've got to, the walk to the ring is always something. You've got like panelists breaking down the fights to kind of help spread this out a little. But if that happens, everyone's home in like an hour and a half, and I spent $300 for my ticket or whatever the hell it would have been at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. I'm sure it was more than that. You go, fuck, I got ripped off. So to artificially pad the show, there are ads everywhere. Other shows coming up on Netflix. They interviewed CM Punk on this thing because Monday Night Raw of WWE is now on Netflix. You cross-promote like a motherfucker. And even with all of the stuffing, all of the extra bullshit in between every fight, they still had to do extended interviews after the main event. Not everybody understands the science of all this shit, and that's fine. But like typically, you want your main event to hit the ring around midnight. So most pay-per-views in boxing and mixed martial arts historically have started at around 10 o'clock. You get some other fights in and out of the way. Your main event fight is taking the walk, as they call it, at around 11:45. And then at midnight or so, the thing starts. And that's for a couple of reasons. It stretches it out just long enough that everybody feels like they've got their money's worth, both having bought the pay-per-view or having bought your tickets. And 9 o'clock on the West Coast still feels like a reasonable time to be watching a sporting event, right? It's a little late for us on the East Coast, but it works across North America. This ended in 17 seconds. So now all of a sudden, you have gotten your main event into the hexagon at midnight, but it only lasted 17 seconds. And so you've got Ariel Helwani, the interviewer, in the ring afterwards, interviewing both fighters. Normally it's like 2 questions and out. These are big, long, extended interviews. And it's fine because no one's tired. No one's overly beat up. It only lasted 17 goddamn seconds. But it's clear as day that they're milking this. We're trying to get the show to like 12:20, 12:30. Could we get to 12:30 before we end this? Now, lots of people, whether it be boxing or UFC or whatever the fuck this shit show was, turn it off as soon as the fight's over. You don't really care about the interviews and whatever else. Lots of people stay, but lots of people tune out. But this was a desperate attempt to stretch it out even longer so that no one would notice that the main event was only 17 seconds long. We should also address the fact, the number of people saying this was rigged or that this was because it only lasted 17 seconds. I don't know what to tell you. You sound like an idiot. You're deeply unserious. And look, I get it. I don't like the Jake Paul bullshit. The guy running this thing. There was a bunch of finishes in this. Like I said, Nate Diaz should not be in combat sports anymore. The guy's fucked up. Stop putting him out there. Francis Ngannou is beating the shit out of his opponent. He knows the fight should be stopped, but the ref isn't stopping it. So he's easing up until the guy finally goes, yeah, all right, I guess it's over. This was a bad show. But Ronda Rousey is still in her 30s. And she was facing a 44-year-old woman who lost 100 pounds to come back and do this. I don't like Gina Carano. But good on you. Anybody capable of you losing 100 pounds to go and do anything or just to lengthen your life and live good for you. But if you are a 44-year-old athlete who hasn't been in a fight in 17 years. She hasn't done this since 2009. Tank Abbott has had a real fight more recently than that. Randy Couture has had a fight more recent than that. You're 44 years old. You clearly weren't in fight shape. Good on you for finding the motivation to lose 100 pounds. Good on you for finding the motivation to earn $1.05 million. But you weren't going to beat Ronda Rousey. And look, Ronda's been out of the fight game for a long time too. And regardless of what you think about WWE, she did do 2 different runs there. And so at least you're still out there active, right? You're still out there doing something, being athletic, staying in shape, not putting on 100 pounds, not having to lose 100 pounds. I'm not busting on Gina Carano. I'm saying these women were in different spaces. And Ronda, in her first run in the UFC, which ended spectacularly when Holly Holm beat the shit out of her and she never came back. But she used to finish people all the time exactly like this. Rush you, take you down, get the armbar. She has a 14-second finish on her resume from her first run. She has a 16-second finish on her. Was this a bad show? Was this like built for eyes and attention and not for a good fight? Yeah, absolutely. But did anything about Ronda Rousey doing this to 44-year-old Gina Carano in 17 seconds surprise me and scream fixed or rigged? No, come on. It's deeply unserious talk. I'll let you know when I think this shit is rigged and fixed and things look crazy and it's not outrageous to suggest under the Paul brothers banner. But that's not what this was. This was Ronda outclassing somebody that she would have always outclassed in the exact same way she's always done it. But look, you can't put a 5-hour broadcast on Netflix and give me 22 minutes of fights. This is very much the way Strikeforce used to work, which was an old fight promotion. Back in the day, there used to be a bunch of them around the UFC. The UFC was the biggest, but there was Pride, there was Elite XC, there was Strikeforce. There was a bunch of things going on. And they would book crazy shit like this. Something completely lopsided or something where you knew you were going to get finishes. These were crazy motherfuckers that were going to stand and bang and nobody was going to try and go to the ground or wrestle. And you would guarantee that even though the fights weren't any good, there would be spectacular finishes all the time. That's what this card was. And when you put it on the front page of Netflix on a Saturday night, people will find it. This will be more watched than any UFC card this year because Netflix is that much bigger than Paramount. There's not one fight on this card that will finish in the top 50 of the year in terms of quality mixed martial arts fights. For people who know fights, for people who enjoy fights, who know what they're looking at, there's nothing on this card that will be viewed as even marginally respectable. But it got eyes. On the front page of Netflix, a bunch of big names, the former heavyweight champion in Francis Ngannou, a former star in Nate Diaz, former killer woman in Ronda Rousey. This was star power. This was writing people's names and not caring about the athleticism, not caring about the product. And look, if you're okay with that, that's fine. I've been talking for a while about the WrestleMania factor, and I got a message the other day from a guy named Dan. He said, you keep alluding to this when it comes to the White House card. What do you mean? Like, I'm not a wrestling guy, which is a pretty fair criticism or concern or question. WrestleMania is the Super Bowl of wrestling, and they do blow off a lot of their big story. It's like the season finale. So there are some good wrestling matches. But it's also where they want to get attention. It's where they want to get on SportsCenter. It's where they want to make sure they have the biggest audience of the year. So you have Floyd Mayweather, who has never wrestled before in his life, come in and he'll do a match. Bad Bunny is going to come in and be involved in a match. Donald Trump and Vince McMahon did like a hair versus hair thing where they didn't wrestle, but they were each in somebody's corner. This was obviously before Trump was a president, although I'm not sure it would matter now. Why wouldn't the President of the United States be at WrestleMania? It's just one of those things we do in 2026. I'm sure. But they bring out stars. I can't remember the girl's name. Somebody from Jersey Shore back in the day was involved in this. This is what they've always done. Mr. T was at WrestleMania 1. It's about names. It's not about giving hardcore wrestling fans the best wrestling match of the year. It's about getting as many eyes on this because we have really big recognizable names here and people go, what the fuck? I want to see what that looks like. The difference now is that you used to have to buy that on pay-per-view and you could get people to do it, but it was harder. Now it's just on Netflix and everybody's got Netflix. WrestleMania was on Netflix. This was on Netflix. So I was worried that the UFC was going to do that at the White House show. The White House show is a joke. It's not something that I want them to be doing. But as long as Dana White is best buds with Donald Trump, here we go. But at least they put together a better card that isn't just old names like I was afraid of. This one was just old names. And good for them. If all they cared about was getting attention, so that's fine. But it wasn't a good card. It wasn't an entertaining show. The building was nowhere close to sold out. But it sure sounds like, here on Sunday afternoon, as some of the early reports are starting to trickle out on ratings, that, man, people watched the hell out of this. So don't be surprised if Netflix does it again. But, man, if you want to hold the attention of a fight fan, you got to give me more than 22 minutes in the ring on a 5-hour broadcast. That's awful. Awful. But it was spectacle more than substance. And on that, I suppose they delivered. They'll be happy with this. What was it? How long ago? Was it almost a year ago now? Less than that? Where Mike Tyson fought Jake Paul? Dude's like 60 years old. It's a spectacle. And I guess we like a spectacle. And who am I to say anything? I watched it. I did not watch the whole thing. But when I got home after watching the hockey game, yeah, I flipped it on, watched the last 2 fights. It was an embarrassment, and then I went to bed. So let's put this show to bed. On Tuesday, you will hear from Tom Harrington. Is Canada ready to host a World Cup? Is there any real risk of political intrigue or violence or whatever going on in the world that we live in right now as we try and host an international sporting event across 3 countries? We'll see what all that's going to look like. And I'm going to ask him about... Look, we already recorded the interview. We will talk to him about whether Canada should be interested in hosting another Olympic Games. There are fewer and fewer countries available, for fairly obvious reasons, to host a Winter Olympics anymore. Snow is getting harder to come by. And it has been suggested that maybe Calgary should take another run at this. Or maybe Vancouver, where the facilities, most of them are probably still kicking around from 2010, should take another run at this. We'll talk to him about that as well, whether that would be in the best interest of anybody here in Canada. So that'll be a good show. As always, we'll have more to come throughout the week. We'll keep you informed on what that's going to look like on our social media feeds at Tall Can Audio. So give us a follow there and subscribe to the pod wherever you're hearing me right now. Otherwise, have a great rest of your long weekend, and we will talk to you on Tuesday morning.